Good day, folks, and I'm back again. So today it was a beautiful run I had in the afternoon at 4 p.m. Meant to go earlier, but was caught up in something. So I did speed work today at a slight incline for about 170 meters, and it was beautiful because the sun was not too hot, but it was clear skies and just nice. The weather was just nice. It was not too humid, even though comparatively it's probably more humid here than most other places in the world. So yesterday we did a recap of the episodes we've done so far. We recapped setting goals, the principle of goal setting and the principle of progression. We recapped consistency as the key. We recapped a beginner and an intermediate runners training program, starting program. And we're going to talk a bit more about building mileage for the intermediate runner today. So how do you build mileage? You know the 10% rule that has been suggested by practically every running book and running video you see out there. That is, every week, do not refrain from increasing your mileage by more than 10% of your total mileage for that week, for the previous week. And this is a good guide, but there are many exceptions to this because you might be coming back from a layoff for some reason, which I don't recommend any layoffs at all, but you might be coming back. And today, in fact, we'll talk about a way of speeding up the increase in mileage so that you get fitter overall without risking injury. And we're going to talk about the principle of intermittent walking. Now, we spoke about this in the beginners program and also in the warm-up for the intermediate runners program. However, I'm talking about using it at the end of your workout to increase mileage. And some of you who might be so obsessed with running your workout straight from beginning to end without any walking, without any variation of pace, this is going to be a gem for you if you actually apply it to your life. And there's a very good reason for this. If you look at people who say, okay, I'm going to run 5 p.m. today. I'm going to run from beginning to end. All right, I might consider doing the 3 to 5 walks in the warm-up, as you have suggested, but otherwise I'm going to run from beginning to end. And, 99% of all runners do that. And guess what? They don't improve. As mentioned before, you need to vary your pace. But in the previous episode, we expanded on the intermediate runners program by saying we can split up the 3 runs. We did 3 runs, and in that program we were doing 3 runs and 3 cross-training workouts. So on the other 3 days of the 6 days. But the 3 runs were short, medium, and long. That was how we were talking about varying distance. Now we're going to talk about varying pace. So how do you vary your pace? It's important to know that if you don't vary your pace, you will not prepare your body for different scenarios. So for example, if you ran, every time you went out, you ran a 10K, and you always ran at the same pace, I can guarantee you almost in 20 years' time, you'll still be doing the same 10Ks at the same pace, if not slower, because you would not have pushed yourself, and the challenges of life would have pressured you to maybe take a few steps back, and then you run slower. So it's unlikely, highly unlikely, that in 10 years from now, if you ran the same 10K at the same pace every day, that you're going to improve at all. So what you need to do is to actually vary your pace, not only throughout the week, but to vary your pace. Here's a key secret: vary your pace within the workout, within the run itself. Now, Van Aken from Germany proposed this in the 1920s. Okay, this is important because there are 2 reasons to vary the pace. One is to prepare you for various paces that you might be challenged with. Even if you're not a competitive runner, if you ran a 10K every day at the same pace, and suddenly you were going out and you were running for the bus, you'd sprint for the bus, and that sprint pace is much faster than your normal 10 km pace. So are you prepared for that? You may not be. And so your ligaments and your tendons might be injured. Your muscles might be pulled. And so running and varying your pace, you need to prepare yourself for such scenarios. The other reason is to lengthen the run. So when we talk about increasing mileage, more than the 10% rule, in fact, is being able to, at the end of a run, let's say you want to increase your 5 km to 6 km or 7 km, what you do is you increase your mileage for that day by including walking breaks. This is important. Now, we talked about walking breaks for the beginner to running, because most of that would be 2 km of walking followed by shuffling of the feet for 10 meters and increasing that 10 meters every 3 weeks. But for the intermediate runner, not only in the warm-up, but at the end of the run, you can increase that distance run by including walking breaks. So what you do is, say you've run 5 km, right? And at the end of the 5 km, you can walk for 100 or 200 meters and then start jogging and running again. And then make sure that you never get out of breath, because that was Van Aken's principle, never get into oxygen debt. And what happens at the end of that running segment, and this would vary for different people because your fitness level would dictate how long you should run before you walk again. But then at a certain point, you need to slow down and walk again. And guess what? This is increasing at more than 10%, because, for example, a 5 km, if you increase it to 7 km in one day, it's way more than its 40% increase. But you can increase it by 40% because you included walking breaks. And you say, oh, that's cheating, that's not running. But that's what I mean by this obsession, this obsessive compulsive problem with sticking to one pace. Because if you allowed yourself to walk, then the running segments, certain segments, especially when you see in the future when we include intervals, you'll be able to run certain segments faster. And that's what you want. You want to vary your pace in such a way that certain segments are slower and certain segments are faster. What is the benefit of that? Like I said, to prepare your body for various paces. If you went into a race and you wanted to be competitive, there are segments that would be faster because people would stride and sprint and try and overtake you, and you need to keep up with them. And not only that, because you want to increase your pace overall, if you ran at the same pace every day, you're just not going to be able to improve very much in the pace. But if you injected faster segments, and the only way you can do that is to have easier segments after the faster segments and before the faster segments. So try to vary your pace within every run, especially at the end of the runs, in order to increase your mileage. So if you wanted to increase from 5 km to 7 km, you can start off first with your 5 km run, at the end of which you take a brief walk, and then you continue to run, and you take a brief walk, and you continue to run until you hit 7 km. It's the same when you want to increase from 7 km to 10 km. Instead of doing it over several weeks, you can do it almost instantly by just including walking breaks. And this is a very good way to increase your mileage very quickly. And when your body adapts to it, you'll be able to run more and walk less. So that closes the gap more quickly than if you were just to increase your mileage by 10% per week, especially if you were coming back from a long layoff. So thank you very much for listening in to this episode, and I hope to see you again soon.